Since September 12th, 2020, which was my official God Day, okay, the first time that I encountered his presence, I have been gathering and slowly assembling pieces of a puzzle. And you know, the version of me prior to that day was a nihilist, and a true nihilist cares not for puzzles. After all, what's the point? There is no puzzle to begin with. This, of course, is a very depressing outlook on life, and I won't go into all the details of the backstory here again, but the lack of a puzzle was wrecking my life, straight up. And so I rolled the dice and went in deep on psychedelics. And again, I'm not going to get into all the details here, but I went into this journey with a single question, a question that would cure me and set the course for the rest of my life. And it was a question, you know, being a nihilist, that I wasn't even aware that I had. What happens when we die? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of... I'm joking. I'm joking. But when you think about that question, what happens when we die? Even though it is arguably the simplest question to raise, to ponder the question is a completely different ballgame. The answer to that question constitutes the literal quintessence of all philosophy, religion, art, you name it. If there is one question that has shaped the course of human history, it is that question. In today's episode, we are going to dive deep, really deep, into that question. You see, all of these pieces of this puzzle that I've been assembling for the past 2 years, they all seem to be pointing to a definitive answer. And there is one singular moment that happened to me last year that constitutes the missing and most important piece to this puzzle. The puzzle of what happens when we die. And so that is what we're going to talk about today in this episode. And we are going to traipse into some very controversial territories, okay? You're going to hear me say stuff like our lives don't matter, or death is the punchline to a joke, and so on and stuff like that. And I don't want anyone in any capacity to kind of jump the gun and think that I'm in any way attempting to diminish or otherwise trivialize death, okay? It's actually quite the opposite of that, and you'll understand what I mean a little later. So if you feel yourself getting upset about one of the things that I say about death, I urge you, I implore you, just listen a little longer. I promise that there is a beautiful message in store for you. I promise. But yeah, we're going to talk a lot about death, but before we do, we must fully understand the lead up to death, which is, of course, life. And that's basically going to be the first half of this episode, is talking about how, you guessed it, life is a joke. That's right, we are going to revisit that concept so that we can fully appreciate and understand death. Okay, trust me, we're going to need that little lesson there. So strap in and prepare yourself for what I'm calling Death is the Punchline. On the night of April 10th, 1992, a comedian, a famous comedian, was driving himself from Los Angeles to Nevada for a gig. Unbeknownst to him, another person took the road that night. A teenager. A drunk teenager. To a seasoned first responder, the car crash that killed comedian Sam Kinison was standard, run-of-the-mill, just another day on the job. But Sam Kinison's passing was anything but standard. A high-speed head-on collision resulted in his body being slammed into the steering wheel, causing a fatal tear in his aorta. More fatal injuries were sustained from his head slamming into the windshield, causing a dislocation of the cervical spine. All this meant that Sam Kinison had mere seconds to live, and the clock was ticking. The teenager who collided with him exited his vehicle unscathed, ranting about the condition of his truck, while the world-famous comedian took his final breaths in the arms of his fellow comedian friend, Carl LaBove. Accompanying those breaths were words, his last. "I don't want to die," he said, anxiously staring past his friend into the sky, transfixed on something beyond. After a brief pause, Still fixated on something in the sky, he asked, "But why? Why now?" It was now clear to his friend Carl that Sam was having a conversation with someone or something he himself could not see. And after another pause, having seemingly received his answer as to why now, Sam Kinison died, uttering the words, "Oh, okay, okay." And he passed with an expression of peaceful bliss on his face. In this episode of my journey through the Pantheos, we will touch the face of death. We will feel its sting. We will feel its release, its terror, its beauty. For it is only through death that we can experience the infinite. Death can be beautiful. And to call Sam Kinison's death ultimately anything but beautiful is to stick one's head in the sand. His death was not a simple snuffing out. He saw something that centered him and embraced him, washing over him and enveloping him in peace and comfort, all in a moment in which his head was internally severed and his heart internally bleeding, leaking pints of blood, heartbeat by heartbeat, pump by pump, into his body. Despite this absolute horror taking place in his body, in his mind, in his soul, peace, stillness, awe, surrender, release. So what was it? What was it that Sam Kinison saw at the time of his death to elicit such tranquility in the midst of utter bedlam? What did that man see? If the overwhelming majority of people who have near-death experiences are to be believed, then what Sam Kinison witnessed is some variant, some combination of angelic beings and or God himself, deceased loved ones, relatives and friends that you encounter, tunnels of light, beautiful music, a full audit of your life, showcasing all of the good and bad things that you've ever done. These are all common themes, okay? Table stakes, if you will, for the near-death experience. At least that's what the majority of people who have had such an experience report. Therefore, in all likelihood, what Sam Kinison witnessed was some kind of combination of that. And I'm kind of blazing through that part, even though it's a very important and integral part. You can get hung up on the visuals and all that stuff and miss the most important part. You see, Sam Kinison did not just see something, okay? He interacted with something. He had a conversation with something. And if you recall from the story, he was a bit trepidatious, a bit fearful about what he was seeing or the implications thereof. He said something like, I don't want to go, why now? Something to that magnitude. And then in response, he was either told or shown something or both that made the man surrender. And when I say surrender, y'all, I'm saying surrendering to death, okay? The very thing that we spend our entire waking existence avoiding. Something was told to this man that changed his mind instantly. It was as if, Sam Kinison being a comedian and all, that he was told a joke with a 39-year setup and was just told the punchline. One of the many life-changing epiphanies that was unfurled to me on the day of December 15th, 2020, okay, my third ayahuasca experience, was that life is a joke. God himself told me this, and when I disagreed with him, he proceeded to take me into the depths of this concept, showing me how everything in existence was the punchline of a joke. Everything had a double meaning. Everything was a yin to the yang. Everything was poetry. He then showed me how this concept applied to the infinitely small, rolling all the way up to the infinitely large, which was him, and that he was the architect and weaver of all jokes in existence. And he told me all of this and so much more in about a 20-second quip, okay, a response, a counter-argument, after I had disagreed with him about life being a joke. But there was a whole lifetime of information crammed into that 20 seconds. I mean, 2 years later, and I am still discovering all the components of what God told me in that, what I'm calling a little 20-second quip. And so we're not going to get into the depths of that right now. Honestly, I'm going to write a book about this, so I need to save something for that. But I at least wanted to point out briefly the 3 categories of jokes that God highlighted in this revelation. And so the first and most overarching flavor of joke that God communicated to me is that of irony. And I did a full episode on this concept, it's called No Joke, that has one of the most Hitchcockian, M. Night Shyamalanian twists you could possibly imagine. Go listen to that episode if you haven't, it's amazing. And I'm not going to rehash all that stuff here again because we're pressed for time, but God made it very clear to me that this poetic irony is woven into everything in existence and rolls up to him, and that he controls it all. The second flavor of joke here is that of bizarre coincidence. And a great example of this is the deaths of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Again, we're pressed for time, so I'm not going to get into the details here. Just go look it up. You'll be absolutely amazed. It's like one of those wow kind of things. And while you're at it, go look up the bizarre coincidence surrounding Abraham Lincoln's brother, Robert Lincoln. Another like, whoa kind of thing. And of course, I have countless examples in my own life, but again, I'm going to write a book about this. I need to save something. But I challenge you to look into your own lives and find examples for yourself. I guarantee you can find them all over the place. What I really want to focus on is this last category of joke, okay? The concept of a prank. And you know, pranks on their surface, they don't seem very sophisticated. I mean, the whole thought of a prank just conjures up imagery of whoopee cushions, or, you know, the famous put whipped cream on someone's hand who's asleep and tickle their nose, right? That kind of crude, right? To take it further, I mean, you could think of it as the lowest form of humor. Well, what if I told you that pranks or gags or whatever you want to call it are God's favorite, and that he uses them directly on us individually to get our attention? I mean, if that is true, this instantly catapults this flavor of joke to being the most important of all the other flavors of jokes. You see, after God had sunk the hook in me, once he explained and I understood how life is a joke, he threw a little Easter egg at me. He looked me in the eye and told me that he had been pulling these little gags, these little pranks on me my entire life, trying to get me to notice him. And of course, I'm on ayahuasca, right? When the moment he said that, a flood of all of the little gag moments and pranks or whatever in my entire life started flowing into me. I mean, every little moment of every time I saw repeating numbers or these words or sentences that would be said at the same time. I mean, these little gags go back as far as I can remember, okay? But the earliest documented evidence that I have of this goes back to 2003.
It's 3:33.
There I am, a fish in the Corps of Cadets, whoopity whoop.
Every time I look at a damn clock, it's 3:33, 2:22, 1:11, 11:11, 10:10. You get the idea. And I just looked at it.
But regardless, between repeating numbers like that and words and sometimes even full sentences being said at the same time by independent, non-causally linked sources, I was seeing these little pranks daily. And you know, they would give me pause, okay, but only for a second. I would think like, that's interesting, but that's about it. In my world of science and statistics, there was nothing magical going on here. Fast forward to September 12th, 2020.
All right.
My God day. Now I'm going to talk about one of the most profound things that I've ever experienced in my entire life. You see, there's another more descriptive word for these pranks that God was referring to. And that word is synchronicity. Where do I start with this? On that day, I experienced a synchronicity that would change my life forever. It's the most complex thinking I've ever done in my life. My entire life up until that point, 37 years of science, statistics, measurement, calculation, and proof, all crumbled, disintegrated, atomized by a single light on a porch, shining down on a couch. And a couple things of very profound timing happened in succession. The night before and bleeding into the morning, I was trying to mourn the selling of my boyhood home. At my mom's old house, it's our family house, which I grew up in. I had spent hours roaming the property trying to drum up emotional memories that would spur on a cathartic emotional release. Right, and everything I was seeing just was sad, but to no avail. It was a negative thing. But then, right at 4:15 a.m., after I had given up, a light. There was like this single little light. A single light shining down perfectly like a spotlight on a wicker couch, which is on the exact spot where I not only had my most cherished memory on that property, but the most cherished memory of my entire life altogether. Same place on the porch. I mean, I'm talking on the nose. Somehow, the house and the property seemed to know this and was welcoming me over to the couch to relive this beautiful memory as my last on the property. And it was as if the house was saying its final goodbye to me. It was perfect. So perfect and so meaningful. It was as if someone had planned it. And it was so perfect because, remember, at this time, the very moment when I saw this light shining down on this couch, I am still an atheist. I am still living in the world of probability and statistics and all that. But of course, I took mushrooms that night. And even though it was now a couple hours or so after the last little trippy effects of the mushrooms kind of played themselves out, I was still convinced that what I was looking at was a hallucination. Like subconsciously, my brain knew that this was the exact location of my favorite memory in life, and basically psilocybin fabricated a beautifully convincing hallucination around that. But the problem was, of course, that it was not a hallucination. It in fact was real. I have a picture of it, and then I went and physically sat down on the actual couch underneath the light. This was real. This was not the mushrooms, y'all. Now granted, the mushrooms may have heightened the emotion in the moment, but they did not create the history of that spot on the porch, nor did they create the light, nor the couch being perfectly placed on that very spot. And you know what else didn't create all of that? My subconscious. And so as I'm sitting there realizing that very fact, I am faced with a dilemma. If it wasn't the mushrooms, then it is either the most jaw-dropping coincidence imaginable, or it is the work of something so powerful and so intelligent that it not only knows my most cherished and deeply held memories, but can somehow coordinate a series of events that serves as a romantically perfect reminder of that specific memory. And it was that single thought, that what if, that changed my life forever. Because the second I opened my mind to that possibility, I got my answer. And my answer was in the form of a deluge, a massive waterfall, a tsunami of infinite love. And the rest is history. It was unmistakably God. And now I have 30-something episodes of a podcast basically telling the rest. But I want to just kind of close this part out here by saying one thing, okay? It is the very subject of synchronicity where the rubber meets the road on this whole science versus religion debate, in my opinion. Like when you're faced with such a coincidence like my God experience, with the light on the porch and all that stuff, there is no way for me to prove to you that it was God. And likewise, there is no way for you to prove to me that it wasn't God. Essentially, when this all boils down, your beliefs will rise to the surface and they will win the day. And that makes all of these experiences basically just one giant elaborate Rorschach test. In fact, you could argue that that's what the psychedelic experience is, just a big, elaborate, grandiose, full of pageantry and whiz-bang fireworks kind of thing. But at the end of the day, just a Rorschach test. Or not. And again, there's absolutely no way that I can definitively prove to you that it either is or isn't. It's a very frustrating and hilarious joke. And of course, that just parlays perfectly into this whole concept of life being a joke in the first place and God being the master of all jokes. In such a system, the existence of God would have to be the most frustrating riddle of them all. And so that presents us with a bit of an impasse here. In order for us to take even one step further, before I attempt to quote unquote prove to you that death is a beautiful punchline, we have to agree and make the giant leap of faith here that God is real and that his creation is basically one giant joke supercomputer. Okay? And let's further assume that whether or not these jokes under God's control are pleasant, they are nonetheless poetic. And let's at least hold out the possibility that even the most incredibly tragic and or evil things that happen in life could very well have a profound reason in the end that makes the whole not only beautiful, but perfect. And so if we can't come to an agreement here, or at the very least, if you can't at least entertain the possibility of that notion, then I'm sorry, you really got to just stop listening right now, because you are not only going to disagree with everything that comes after this, but it's also going to really piss you off. And so now we are going to go into an intermission so that we can, have those people leave us, and the people that want to stick around and hear more, you can stay. Because after this intermission, I'm going to tell you exactly what happens when we die. Okay, this is the intermission. Sorry that we had to dive so deep into the whole life as a joke thing and kind of rehash a lot of stuff there. Trust me when I tell you that I gave you the short version. Okay, this is now like my third time to re-record this episode, and I went into way deeper detail. And it was when I was doing that when I realized, you know what? I need to write a book. But it was very critical, in my opinion, for us to kind of revisit that and understand more of what life as a joke really means. But also, I found it very critical to dive as deep as we did into the importance and the overall impact of synchronicity. Because it is the understanding of one particular synchronicity that happened to me that completely unlocks the afterlife, in my opinion. So do yourself a favor, take a break, go walk your dog, go get something to eat, go drink a beer, call your mom, call your dad. Everyone do that every now and then, by the way. But take a little break and come and revisit this when you're ready, because it's about to get really deep and really controversial. Or, again, if you want to be a true journeyman, strap on those gloves, put in your mouthpiece, your gumshoe, rather, step in the ring, and let's go. Okay, we're back. So even though I spent 20 minutes talking about life as a joke and giving this example of this synchronicity that changed my life forever, I still feel like that I had to rush through there as fast as possible. That topic goes as deep as you can possibly imagine, and I legit am going to write a book about it, because if I were to tell you everything, then this episode would be like 4 hours long. So trust me when I tell you that that was the lightning round version of all of that. And to prep you for this next segment where I talk about how death is the punchline of a joke and how death can be beautiful and etc., I have to give basically the lightning round version of trip number 10, Beyond Infinity, just to kind of remind you of the overall themes and the major things that happened, because that episode was like 5 months ago, for crying out loud, and a lot of random non sequitur kind of things have happened since then. And so to sum up trip number 10, Beyond Infinity, and as quickly as I can here, I went in questioning what my path was, trying to get an answer on what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, etc. The entity that I've encountered on basically all of my experiences shows up, the one that I call God. He shows up. I shove a crucifix in its face to test it, because people have been screwing with my head, telling me that I'm being deceived by demons. Okay. This action sends me into hell with the crucifix landing directly on my forehead. I wrestle with myself in hell. I feel the full, I'm not going to say the full pain, but I feel enough of the pain and suffering of sacrifice of, dying for someone's sins And when I put two and two together and I realized, oh, this must have been what Jesus was feeling like, boom, I'm rescued from hell. And then after recovering from that, I kind of get a little testy with God and I say, hey, look, I want to talk to you right now. I need to know what the heck my path was. I still haven't gotten an answer. He shows up. He is not super pleased with that I called him out. And I get blasted with infinity, which is incredibly painful. And I felt like I almost died about 3 times. And the only thing that saved me from dying was the crucifix that I had in my hand. During that, I saw the multiverse and beyond the multiverse and all this other stuff. But I get blasted with these waves of infinity about like 3 or 4 times. And after the last wave, upon recovering, I have this unbelievable epiphany, this realization or revelation or whatever about how it is possible to reconcile Muslim extremism with Christianity. And it all pivots around the infinite power of God and how we are nothing in the face of that infinite power. And both of these religions understand that thoroughly. And so the Muslim extremist is trying to show you in the most violent way imaginable how serious the stakes are here. I mean, something with infinite power has its thumb on us, basically, but they're not quite understanding that God is in all of us and God loves all of us. And so all you're really doing is injuring God. And this is not, a cool thing to do. And on top of God's infinite power, he also has infinite love and forgiveness. And so the full circle here is for the Christian to forgive the Muslim extremists, even to the extreme of washing the Muslim extremists' feet and meaning it. That's the kicker. So that was the full ayahuasca experience. And this experience was punctuated a couple days afterwards with yet another unbelievably earth-shattering, life-changing synchronicity. And if you haven't heard or if you don't remember this synchronicity from trip number 10, I was driving in my car down a highway, a long kind of road trip kind of thing, listening to my own recording, my recollection, my recounting of the ayahuasca experience. On the part where I fall into hell, all of a sudden, I pass by mile marker 666 on the highway, and my eyes just happen to, completely out of chance, lock on to that number 666 as I'm passing it by at 75 miles an hour. About 1/10 of a mile west of that, right as I'm saying the words, Jesus Christ saved me from hell, there's a crucifix on the side of the highway that I pass up at 75 miles an hour. This, of course, means that someone had to die on that spot that resulted in a crucifix on the side of the highway for this synchronicity to have played out. I then researched the possible accident that happened there. I found the accident. I looked up the person. I found a eulogy video online. When I fast forwarded randomly with my thumb to about midway through the video, the pastor giving the eulogy says my name. He says the name Andrew. Okay, that was the husband's name of the lady who died. And then he says the lady's name and says, "We love you infinity now." So obviously this synchronicity, there are about 4 or 5 overlapping synchronicities within the overarching synchronicity. It was the most amazingly, cosmically coincidental thing that had ever happened to me in my entire life. And to me, it was undeniable proof that what I experienced on that ayahuasca experience was real. That furthermore, hell is real. Furthermore, that Jesus is real. And the really creepy part about it is it took someone dying, because that's really the only reason there would be a crucifix on the side of the highway, for this whole thing to be proven to be real. And so utterly freaked out by this, I do what I usually do, and I sit down and grab my phone and put it on my voice memo recorder and hit record, because I want to capture a deep thought. And that's where we jump in with this voice memo. Here we go. So just like it's a microcosm of the last little takeaway of my trip and the problem that we face with bringing cultures and peoples together and forgiveness and trying to see eye to eye on things, is this route, mile marker 666 and the cross and the enormity of what I saw on the other side, with God, coming out of that, I realized how serious it is. Like how lucky we are to be here, given what I saw, and how serious the stakes are. And like it's kind of like, hey, I just saw the infinite. I came back from that. This being allows us to stay here and live here. Like, get your act together right now, because what I saw is terrifying. And if you don't want to get your act together, here, you're dead. Like, let's kill you. Your life doesn't matter anyway. And that's the terrifying message. You know, that's what Islam is doing. You know, like Islamic radical Islam, right? And so that's a microcosm. The 666 and the cross moment was a microcosm, because for me to understand how serious it is, I mean, it's everything wrapped up in one. It was being in hell and Jesus pulling me out of hell, and me seeing the infinite. When that preacher said, "We love you, infinity," that was a little echo of that. He was saying, hey, what you saw was in fact infinity. And then a person had to die. Our lives don't matter in the grand scope of the chess game that is played at the cosmic level. Our lives don't matter. And here's an example of that. And, you know, the example being that this person had to die for me to understand how serious what I saw was. It's not just like, hey, it was serious in your trip, and you can come away from it saying it was just a trip and I really didn't almost die. In my trip, I almost died. It felt like I was going to die. I still can't tell the difference. I don't know how mofos can just say, let myself die. You don't want to die. I guess I hadn't got that desperate in my struggles that I would want to die. Maybe that's how people do it. Maybe they're at such the end of their rope that they see this way out during a trip and they want to die and they just let go. Maybe that's it. Or maybe you've been through so much terrible things in your life, of which I, really haven't, honestly, compared to others, that you've seen such terrible and been through such terrible stuff that you're like, okay, screw it. Kill me. Maybe that's it. But to me, I can't. I don't want to die. Anyways, my point is that that's how serious. Like, I really thought I was going to die on the trip, and you can write off the moment and the trip as it's not real. Like, you come out of it, like, it's real for you in the moment, right? But you come out of it and you're like, okay, that was all in my brain. It obviously, was just stuff that I had projected onto myself and the universe or whatever, and it was just reflected back at me. And it's not real. It's just some nice little lessons to learn, but I can just put that in my back pocket as being not real. Well, this was God. This synchronistic event was God saying, Andrew, it was real. And somebody had to die for that message to be a perfect message, because it was perfect. And that's the terrifying component of this, is that someone had to die. And that reaffirms the whole notion of our lives are kind of meaningless in the chess game that God and these higher powers play with us. But, and this is a big but here, I would like to stress here that it is not on us to try to set our own messages here with the chess game that God plays. In other words, we shouldn't, and this is the message for the Muslim extremists, even though our lives are basically meaningless in the grand scheme of things, God still loves us. And there is some of us, or some of him in us. And therefore you should not be going wantonly killing people, or just killing people at all. Forget wantonly. If you intentionally kill someone, that is you're breaking a commandment. I'm sure Moses was in the freaking... No, I guess he probably wasn't. I don't know. I'm going to have to go read the Quran or something like that to figure this out. Oh, man, I haven't even read the Bible. It's just like, people are going to want to kill me. You read the Quran and not the Bible. I can just hear people now. But that's what I'm trying to say, y'all. We shouldn't... I mentioned, put all of our everyone on the planet on a giant airplane and slam it into a building. It's what the Muslim extremists are trying to let us know in their own brutal, nasty, terrible ways, that our lives don't matter. And I can see and agree with them based on what I saw. However, we shouldn't be killing people. Our lives, even though they're not important in the grand scheme of things, they are important in some way. I was about to say they are important to God, but, I don't know. This is the mystery, y'all. This is the mystery. Okay? But ultimately what I'm trying to say here is that woman died at mile number 666. And her husband's name is Andrew. And the preacher said, "We love you infinity," after I had a trip where I was in hell being pulled out by Jesus by the crucifix, and I got to see the infinite power of God. So it took that crucifix on the road for it to really sink home. And so that woman died in my life, anyway, in my universe, for that whole event to take place and transpire. And the joke, I keep saying, like, so it's a tragedy for her, obviously, and her family. It's a tragedy. And therein lies the whole microcosm here of, we have to reconcile cutting off heads and flying airplanes into buildings, killing 3,000 Americans, with the peace, love, and forgiveness and all that of Christianity. It has to be reconciled, and it's going to be painful, because no doubt this family is going to want to friggin' kill me for saying that their daughter lived and died so that I can have this experience with God. I would want to kill someone who said that of my family. But I hope that family also understands that my whole message here is that and see, here's the other thing. I would get pissed off and want to kill me too if the person also said, but you had to understand life is a joke. And it's like, what? Now I doubly want to kill you. You're saying not only that my daughter died so that you can have this God experience, but it's also that it's all a joke. Like, I'm going to get out my, forget Islam. I'm going to bust out all the torture methods on you, man. But y'all, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that forget what you call it. I'm calling it a joke, but what it really is a metaphor, a giant metaphor, and like a beautiful one. And yes, y'all, death can be beautiful. And yes, even I'm not going to... We'll take it just a heinous form of death, right? Getting burned alive, y'all, can be beautiful. Anyone who has come close to death, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These are hard words to say, because I'm sure there's someone out there who almost burned to death that can say, hell no, Andrew, you weren't there. I'm living with the reality of having almost died by fire every day. You shove those words right up your... Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, man or woman. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to... I'm just trying to communicate what's happened to me, y'all. And I'm trying to reconcile it with the fact that if I was this family, and I'm saying this because I have to say this, y'all, that I would want to go and kill me, you know? And I'm just saying, like, somewhere in there lies the answer, is all I'm saying, to everything. Somewhere in that whole equation of trying to reconcile the terrible things I'm saying, which are also incredibly beautiful and also very terrible. Somewhere in there lies the answer to everything. And it's a microcosm of what the trip was. And it was beautifully summed up in a 5-second, maybe 10 seconds at the most. I think it was like maybe a tenth or 2/10 of a mile after the mile 666 marker. It was 666, 10 or 20, or like, 5 or 10 seconds, crucifix. Right coinciding with my episode or my recording recounting what happened and saying I went to hell, 666, and I got rescued by Jesus, crucifix. And I'll go over the story again because it's important. Now look it up, and the way she died was an accident, but it wasn't, the person's, the 18-wheeler's brakes were, they passed inspection when they shouldn't have. That's negligence, y'all. That's someone taking the path of least resistance because they don't want to have to go the extra mile. They're being lazy, and that's where evil lies. It was clearly communicated to me on trip number 5. That's what happens. And it ultimately wants us dead. I don't think it's smart enough to coordinate. And this is where it gets even more fucked up, y'all, because I don't know if evil is smart enough and has enough power to coordinate something like that. It was probably just, I don't know, man. I'm talking like a crazy person at this point. But brakes not being inspected, how do you correlate that with evil? It's just, maybe I shouldn't even go down that path. I don't know. And maybe God has a part to play in it. Surely he does, because that person had to die. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe this is all an accident. Maybe God is created somehow. I don't know what the hell could create God, but maybe God pops into existence, and with it, evil is created. And God is like, oh crap. It's like, whoops, this is part of me too here. And I need to try to help people and get people to help themselves and help others against this part of me that is a bad part that has been created on accident or something. Like, I don't know. Like, how does it? No one's ever going to know this stuff, y'all. This is the deepest of deep stuff you could possibly imagine. But that has definitely crossed my mind. It's like, what if God accidentally created evil? And the cat's out of the bag and he can't put it back in. I mean, that would imply that God is not all powerful. But define all powerful. if you are all powerful and you create something that is still, and you accidentally create something that is still you, how does an all-powerful part of you destroy and eradicate another all-powerful part of you? It's like two all-powerful things colliding. What's going to happen? I don't know. Something had to create evil, y'all, and it certainly wasn't another god. I mean, what I saw was the infinite, man. I don't know how you get above and beyond the infinite, that something more infinite than the infinite can create the infinite. But if the infinite is real, then therefore it created evil and all that stuff too, somehow. And I don't know how the heck it reconciles, other than the fact that you need evil to understand what goodness is. And with our lives not mattering in the grand cosmic scale of things, it's up to us to set that stuff right. God just throws out the possibilities out there, and there's extremes on both sides, good and evil, and we gotta navigate the waters and make sure that we're maximizing good and minimizing bad, because everywhere you go, there's going to be bad no matter what. Even when you're having good times, there's an undercurrent of bad ready to just pull you under. You got to be on your toes at all times. You got to navigate the path always. The moment you let up, it can overtake you. And if it overtakes you, remember, it not only wants you dead, that's its ultimate goal. It wants to spread and infect, and it wants to take others down with you, and it's trying to maximize death. Oh, I'm talking myself in circles here, and I'm never gonna know the answer, y'all. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying to wrestle this one. But it all collides, no pun intended here, with this woman dying at mile marker 666. Everything seems to collide there. She died for a reason. And again, life is a joke, right? I'm coming full circle back to that life is a joke thing. I went on that long tangent. I think it was needed. But now, what the hell's going on here? Yeah, okay, so I'm still recording. I thought I wasn't recording for a second. Went on that long tangent, but it was needed to kind of butter you up for this whole life is a joke thing that I'm about to tell you. Because we don't need to get hung up on words here. Take the word joke, crumple it up, throw it in the corner, replace it with whatever words you want, y'all. But what I'm ultimately getting at here is like a poetic, metaphoric. It's hard to use the word beauty because there's some terrible, sad things that happen in people's lives. Profound and deep is probably the best words. Profound and deep poetry and metaphor and symbology, right? And what I'm calling a joke. And what God told me is a joke. Now, again, words are not important, but they are, but they're not. It's all a joke. But gosh, I keep talking in circles here. This is killing me. That woman died for a reason. For my joke to have a punchline. And my joke's punchline is that God is infinite, and and Jesus is real, and hell is real. And you can be saved from hell by both God and Jesus. And that the infinite is real. And God is the infinite. And that our lives don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but they do. And I guess a part of this is the heartache and the sorrow of someone's death, and us needing to reconcile that with. I'm going over the same stuff. Imagine all the people who died in 9/11, y'all. Us as Christians, I say us here, because now I am one, need to forgive. And when you forgive, it's a holistic thing. And you forgive anybody and everybody, because that's what Jesus did. And so when I'm saying those words, guys, you got to understand what I saw, what the Muslim extremists are trying to beat you over the head with, and then take that head and cut it off. What they're trying to say is, like, get real, get serious. This is legit stuff. Like this, the infinite is terrifying, and we're lucky to be here. And if you're not paying attention, So what I'm saying is like, they're going about it like their own way, and I would say it's wrong. But again, as Christians, forgiveness. You take someone who's misguided like that, Osama bin Laden. Not only do you forgive him, you wash his feet like Jesus would. That is such a deep message. I cannot even imagine how deep of a message that is. And that's why that woman died. She died on mile number 666 on that highway. For me to know that all of this is 1,000% real, and that forgiveness is universal and applies to all. And hopefully, so that her death isn't in total vain. If it helps one person, aka me, that's great, right? But hopefully this can affect, this message can affect at least one other person. If we can get that, because I know this is going to create a lot of enemies and people are going to want to kill me even. But if we can convince even just one other person, I think that with each person that we convince, that woman's death will have been not in vain. We need to honor that woman by understanding this. And understanding is one thing. What we do next, I don't know. I'm terrified to think what we do next, because, people are going to, there's a lot of pain and misunderstanding, and more people may die. But again, going back to the joke, I haven't even finished my point here. She died to wrap up my joke in a nice, perfect bow. I didn't want it to be like that, but that's what happened. But she herself had her own jokes going in life with God. And just like I saw in trip number 5, where I looked down the cosmic fern and I saw that everyone in the universe had their own joke, their own set of jokes, like, you know, a subset and a superset, and how they all of our jokes correlated with one another into this, superset roll up of jokes that, if one thing changes on the smallest level, it affects all the other jokes in kind. And sometimes, maybe a lot of times even, I don't know, you go about your own little joke and nothing really happens, but every once in a while something will happen to where your joke collides directly with someone else's joke. And both jokes have to adjust, but they adjust perfectly and seamlessly, and it was supposed to be that all along, kind of thing. Like the conclusion of both of those jokes is something that it makes perfect sense. Of course it had to be like this. And so what I'm saying here is that from my point of view, from my perspective, she had to die for this message to sink home for me. But from her point of view, from her perspective, that surely wasn't her answer and her reason for dying. I think a beautiful thing to come out of this would be that her last moments were a beautiful thing. I can't imagine that based on what I read about how she died. I'm not going to go into the details. But I know I almost died drowning, and in my last, what would have been my last moments anyway, I was like saved at the utmost last moment before I started breathing in water. I had a sense of euphoria wash over me, and it was a beautiful thing. It was a lot like being in the presence of one of these amazing angel things that I've seen on my trips. And again, I'm not going to go into how she died, okay? But I just hope that something like that happened for her in her last little moment there. And I hope that it all summed up her joke. That her last moment was the last punchline to her overall joke in life, and that it was a beautiful one for her. And if I know God, I'm not claiming I do. I've talked to him a few times. I'm not so I can't just based on a few conversations say that I know God, but it seems to me like he would make that the reality based on what I've seen and know. So in so many words, what I'm saying here is that she had her own joke. I had my own joke. And our jokes collided. And I'm not trying to trivialize or diminish her life in any form by saying that her joke fulfilled, or her life fulfilled a punchline for my joke. Especially when you consider, y'all, that I'm talking about her death being almost concrete evidence. I mean, I realize this is circumstantial evidence, y'all, be thrown out of court. But to me, it's proof. The circumstantial evidence is so overwhelming for me. If I'm the judge, I'm not throwing that out of court. I'm going to be like, there is a major correlation here. It's undeniable for me. And hopefully it's undeniable for a lot of other people. And what I'm saying here is that she died so that people will know that God is real. For people she died as proof that God is real and Jesus is real. And you can be saved from hell, from both God and Jesus. That's why she died. For any of you out there who are family members who know how sweet of a woman she was, and you're upset about the symbology of her dying at mile marker 666. You think Satan was involved or something like that, or heaven forbid, God forbid, that you think that she's doomed because of this or something like that. That is not the case. She died on mile 666 for this message to come through, that God is real and Jesus is real, and you can be saved from hell by both of them. And also that we need to come together as a human race and forgive each other and try to see eye to eye. I mean, this is the deepest thing in existence as you can possibly imagine. That is why she died. It's a beautiful thing. And again, if you're one of these people, you don't see the circumstantial evidence as being overwhelming and being something to pay attention to, I'm sorry you feel that way. I can tell you that I used to be just like you, though. It's like, yeah, that's all great and grand, but it's circumstantial evidence. Well, my argument to that is nowadays I know that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. Anyone who is religious deeply and understands and may have had experiences with God or Jesus or something else in the kind of what some people would call supernatural realm here. Anyone who's had experiences like that knows exactly what I'm talking about here, is that God cannot come down on a flaming chariot throwing lightning bolts and stuff like that. That's like an objective experience for other people to see. And now apparently he's done that in the past before, once or twice or something like that. But the point is, it's like when you're getting these messages and stuff from God, obviously it would be a lot more powerful if he just descended on this flaming chariot, and let everyone else see it too. I think if everyone else saw that, they would fall to their knees and they would bow down, and for the rest of their lives they would be saved, whatever, and blah blah blah. That's not how it works. You got to have the struggle. You got to have the mystery. That's the key word there is the mystery. If you just flat out knew without trying, there is no deeper catharsis. There's no deep understanding. It's just a known thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's like taking a microwavable lasagna, throwing it in the microwave for 3 minutes, going out and eating it, versus creating the lasagna from scratch, like being the doing the recipe and maybe experimenting some yourself. Like, hey, this is my own version of lasagna and stuff. And you come out with this beautiful dish that you're going to love and respect a lot more than if you just threw something in the microwave. Or worse, go and get something at freaking Burger King. What a burger. That's what all the Texans like, right? Go get yourself a mushroom Swiss. Sure, it's a great burger. If you came home and made it yourself, you'd love it a lot more and understand it a lot more. It'd be a lot more impactful. You take more pride in it. And I know the word pride is a double-edged sword, but I'm talking about good, wholesome, godly pride here, which is a completely different thing. The word pride in and of itself is a joke. There's a bad side and there's a good side. The bad side is extremely bad. Extremely, extremely, extremely bad. It's hellish. The gates of hell are buttressed with that word. I don't know what I'm trying to finish up here by saying, but all I can tell you is that this moment, y'all, is a pivotal moment. I think a lot of people can write it off as it not being that, but it is. And you ignore it at your own peril. Anyway, I don't know what else to say here other than that I would have rather not had that woman die. But y'all, death is the ultimate. It's the most serious thing that we deal with in our little universe, y'all, for humans, right? Everything about our existence is structured around death. Every emotion you have, every survival instinct you have, every decision you make basically boils down to survival. You're either increasing a pleasurable experience or decreasing a displeasurable experience. And in the extreme or on the aggregate, on both sides of that, it's a life and death kind of thing, aggregated. Why am I not standing on my head right now instead of sitting on this couch comfortably? Well, it's because it's comfortable to sit on a couch in a certain manner because it's not harmful for you. It's the path. Oh gosh, here's another zinger for you. It's kind of like the path of least resistance. You're not trying to stress yourself out here. If I were to stand on my head, you're putting stress on your body that, could kill you. Every little decision, even down to the tiny ones like how I sit on the couch, on the aggregate, y'all, can lead to life or death. Everything in your life is about death. There are no higher stakes for us. So the only way for these messages to get sunk home, it's the reason that we go to war. You can't just have an arm wrestling match between the leaders of two different countries, or if you want to go back to the dawn of time, like two different little tribes or whatever. You can't just have an arm wrestling match. That's not good enough. There's always going to be like, okay, well, he may have won the wrestling or the arm wrestling match, but I could go kick his ass, right? And then it's like, okay, well, maybe I didn't win the ass kicking contest, but if I had a friggin' machete, I bet you I could chop him up some. It's like you have to go to war because you have to have the ultimate answer, the ultimate proof, the ultimate test, the ultimate stakes. And so death is a very, very effective a message or tool. Death is a very effective tool to deliver a message. It is the sharpest and most undeniable one that we can be hit with. And unequivocal. Unequivocal. That's the word. Unfaltering. It's like everyone understands it. Everyone always has understood it from the dawn of time. It's the one universal thing that all humans can agree on is the seriousness of death. I mean, Buddhist monks and stuff, they'll say, and anyone who's gone, through this ego death thing in psychedelics, they'll say, well, no, it's not. Once you're on the other side, you'll understand that death is just a passage to the afterlife and everything. Well, y'all, the Buddhists have created a whole religion about releasing themselves from that, right? The fact that there's a whole religion built around it, to me, says you guys may think it's not important, but you had to spend your whole freaking lives and build a whole religion to trick your brain into not believing that it's a big deal. So to me, that makes it still a big deal. And for those of you who went through ego death and psychedelics, like, yeah, death is not a big deal. Well, guess what? You had to die. And some of you go to hell in your psychedelic experience to come away with that understanding. So to me, that still makes it a big deal. It's like, hey, man, if psychedelics wasn't involved, it's like I come up to someone, I'm like, hey, man, I'm gonna show you how unimportant death is by killing you. And then you're going to go to hell. It's the most important thing, y'all, that is in our universe that we know of as humans. I'm sorry. Death is everything. So that's why it makes it so hard, and that's why it's so perfect of an answer for this to hit home. That's why it hit me the last of all the things that popped out of that synchronistic experience. It's the cross. It took me 2 days for it to finally hit. It's just like, damn, dude, someone died. That's how serious it is. That's, God letting me know how serious it is. It's like, dude, someone freaking died. So you can curse and scorn me all you want, everybody. I'm sorry. That's what the reality is, and I've seen it. You can curse and scorn me, like I said, all you want, but there is no other answer for me. This, in and of itself, y'all, will be an episode. I just realized how long I've been talking here. 44 minutes and 44 seconds. Love you all. And so, summing everything up here. We are born into an existence of metaphoric poetic irony. Sometimes that poetic irony is good, sometimes it's bad, but it's always beautiful. Never forget that Sophocles and Shakespeare mostly wrote tragedies, okay? The worst of brutality and misery, but one cannot deny the beautiful irony in it all. And so, if you're lucky, you have mostly pleasant jokes. If you're unlucky, you have mostly unpleasant jokes. But the ones who are really lucky, the most lucky, have something infinitely pleasant to fall back on, such that regardless if your joke is pleasant or not, you can cope. But even if you are the most unlucky person in this regard, with the worst jokes and no backstop, when you die, you will understand that everything that you experienced in life was a giant synchronicity, a giant prank, a giant joke. And immediately upon understanding this, God, the architect and weaver of all jokes, will give you the ultimate punchline to it all. The reason for your pain, the reason for your suffering, the reason for your heartache, sadness, anger, joy, love. The reason why 3-year-old babies die of leukemia, the reason why people are tortured and killed by cartels, the reason why people hijack planes and smash them into buildings, the reason why young women die in motorcycle accidents on mile marker 666, the reason for your life, the reason for all life, the reason for existence. And not only will it all make perfect sense and be an all-encompassing, perfectly tied up ribbon on everything, but I'm calling it right now. It will be the simplest answer imaginable. An answer so simple that it wasn't even imaginable to you or anyone else in life. And the really funny part will be that you will realize that you already knew it. You just forgot it. Life stamped the answer out of you. But above all else, this answer, this punchline, will be the most conceivably beautiful concept in existence, and one that will allow you to finally let go of our world. And when that happens, you will know, as terrifying as death is, even if you were burned alive, death is just a paper-thin barrier that one must break through to get to eternal life, eternal joy, eternal peace. And when you are on the other side in spirit form and can assimilate and fully absorb that infinite love that I myself have experienced, trust me when I say that you will not care one tiny bit how you died or what terrible things happened to you in your life. Not that you would give it a second thought anyway, though, because you were just given the punchline. And death is the punchline. Thank you very much. Deep, deep stuff there. I hope I didn't upset too many of you. But, we can't get into such deep topics without ruffling some feathers. I just hope that those whose feathers are ruffled can kind of see through the fog and the mist and understand that there is a good message here. I hope that you can see that anyway. Ultimately, what I'm saying here is that all conceivable suffering will be justified in the end in a beautiful way. And I don't think that that's a bad message at all. And so if you still want to attack me for that message, then fine, go ahead, whatever. And for the rest of you who don't want to attack me, get ready to change your mind, because the second part of this, the companion piece for this, the next episode is going to completely screw everyone's world up here. But I promise, even in that episode, there is an unbelievably amazing, beautiful message. And so, I hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the next go-round. I love you all. Bye-bye.